Canada's ambassador to the U.S. is stepping down. Kirsten Hillman is also this country's lead negotiator on U.S. trade. So what does this mean for CUSMA negotiations? Well, our City Talks panel is going to dive right in. Joining me is Hussain Aboghodieh, Ginny Roth, and Marion Nader. Welcome and thank you for joining us. This is critical because Donald Trump has been threatening to actually let CUSMA expire, and that is the protection for the majority of Canadian exports to the U.S. Ginny, I'm going to start with you. How crucial is this, having a new ambassador?
It's the biggest job that you can deploy, the biggest person who's full-time in D.C., not like a cabinet minister that you send off periodically, or the PM who's there when he can spare the time, or when the president's ready to meet with him. The ambassador's supposed to be there all the time, working the phones, working the angles, building out the parameters of deals, et cetera. And so it's one of the biggest jobs you can influence if you want a good outcome.
One of the ones we don't really see firsthand, do we?
That's right. And I think Kirsten Hillman has been an exemplary public servant. She's got a really long history doing great trade deals, but she's not made a lot of progress on this file. And I think that speaks to a sort of dated strategy on Trump, a strategy that goes back to around 2016, the sort of the first foray with Trump of negotiations. And I think the Prime Minister rightly wants to put his mark on a new strategy. And I think he is going to, like he's approached other appointments, try to appoint a deal maker. Okay. Someone who has real serious experience doing deals with tough people.
Marion, names are being floated. Do you have any picks? Hussain, do you have any picks? What do you think?
I don't have any particular picks, but I think, Ginny, you raised some really good points. And also, a lot of it is relationship-based. So, if someone's going to leave now, bring in the new person. I'm sure Carney wants his own person in, and build those relationships, because that's what's going to help navigate, getting through those tough times.
And for Ambassador Hillman, she's one of the first ambassadors who's not a political appointee or not a former politician. For a long time, it's been traditionally in Canada, the U.S. ambassador is a former politician, retired politician. People are floating all kinds of names around. And it speaks to her actually strength on the file, and that she was appointed as an acting ambassador, then became the official ambassador in 2020. 5 years been around, so there's going to be some strong shoes to fill. I agree with my colleagues here. It's all about relationship building. Who can sit down with the senators? Who can sit down with congressmen? Who can really speak to the White House? Who can speak to Trump's style of negotiation? So there's really some big shoes to fill over there.
Let's turn to a new bill tabled yesterday by the Liberal government aimed to tackle crime, tackle femicides, the Jordan ruling. There's a lot in this bill. I'm going to argue that it's been a long time coming because it's looking at some critical issues. Marion.
100% long time. And, the Liberals could have brought this forward. I mean, even, at the time, even some of the Conservatives at the time when they were in government could have brought it forward. At the end of the day, yes, it needs to be updated and modernized. However, addressing the symptoms and not the root causes is not going to make communities safer. So there also needs to be resources putting into addressing poverty, mental health, illness, housing, addictions, resources for the courts.
But let's stick to the bill. Ginny, Pierre Poilievre, I'm going to give him some props here. He has been beating this drum for a very long time, while the Liberals weren't doing very much about it under Trudeau. It's taken a long time for them to sort of catch up to this narrative.
Yeah, Poilievre's been talking about this for years and years, well before a lot of the provincial premiers who you now see sort of screaming about it because they're desperate for the support from the federal government. Premiers, I think, basically across the board in Canada of every partisan stripe. And yeah, you see the Liberals trying to play catch up, I think for political reasons, because they understand that in seats they won, in the last election seats they would have to win if they wanted to form a majority government. You have moderate voters who want to see some real tough on crime solutions and who are sort of horrified when they see repeat offenders violently offending again, especially among vulnerable people like women and children and that sort of thing. The problem is, as I understand it, the pieces of legislation the Liberals have brought forward just fall short. They don't achieve the bail reform and the requirements for justices to really stick to some of the mandatory minimums and parameters on sentencing that are just crucial for keeping people behind bars who perpetrate these kinds of serious, so that you don't get these exceptions where they say, well, we had to factor in someone's immigration status, or we had to factor in some other context to give them a lighter sentence, when what they did, in the eyes of any common sense person is just horrific and should put them behind bars for a long time.
And we at City News have done many stories on the Jordan ruling, which a suspect can walk free if he doesn't get his court date in time, and some serious, serious charges have just been stayed. Why did it take the government so long to address this issue? Thousands of people have walked free.
I agree, actually, with my colleagues. There was, let's say, the dying days of the Trudeau era, there were a lot of distractions. And unfortunately, they didn't really look at the issues, at the core issues, as my colleagues answered. We now have a new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, hopefully pushing for those issues. But I think the devil's in the details. And we have to look at bail reform. We have to look at minimum sentences. We have to look at people who are repeat offenders going out, because it's essential for the communities that people live in. You know, there's been a spike in crime the last at least 4 or 5 years, if not more. And so it's very important to not only put forward a bill, but actually, how does it get implemented on the ground?
Yes.
What's its effect on the people committing the crimes, and how do we address that specifically?
And how is it interpreted in the courts, right? Which has a direct impact. Okay, let's turn to a Nanos poll that just came out, showing that the Conservatives and the Liberals are pretty much neck and neck. And Marion, you know, a little bump for the NDP. I'm sure you're very happy to hear that.
Double digits.
But let me ask you this. There's a difference between perception in the polls and what would happen in the seat count. If an election were to be held tomorrow, do you think anything would change? Ginny?
You know, it's funny. I've been talking to people. For a living, I talk to people about this kind of thing all the time. And for almost 18 months, maybe even 2 years now, I think we've been in a de facto tie. Even though there was this period where the Conservatives seemed to be soaring in public opinion, really it was speaking to the unpopularity of Justin Trudeau, which was sort of a distortion in the polling. Things leveled out. They evened out. They were even through the last general election. And I think they remain. Maybe Carney had a bit of a honeymoon, which we're now seeing peter off. The Liberals and the Conservatives are pretty tied. The Conservatives have consolidated the right of the spectrum. The Liberals have consolidated most of the left. And unfortunately for the Conservatives...
Marion didn't like that comment, but I have to agree with Ginny.
I'm coming back to the NDP, so just give me a second. Unfortunately, for the Conservatives in a tie, the Liberals tend to win on seat count.
Because of distribution of vote.
But what's concerning for the Liberals is the rise in the NDP. If the NDP can get back up above double digits into 12, 13, 14, 15%, they're pulling from the Liberals almost exclusively at that point, and that really starts to impact seat splits, and you start to see real opportunity for the Conservatives to make hay of that and maybe make gains.
Would Carney be better off if you were advising him to call an election? I mean, he has a minority government. Should he call an election quickly in 2026 or hold on as long as he can?
If I was a Liberal, I would say call it quickly. But as a New Democrat, I think it's better,
just wait.
Just wait a little bit, please, for the love of everything good. But I think, Jenny's right in terms of, they are neck and neck. But in terms of who would make the best prime minister, then you see a wide spread. The thing is, if an election was held today or even in the spring, I think the New Democrats, there were a lot of those votes were lent to the Liberals because of the state we were in. And the reason why Carney won, because people voted for Carney, they didn't vote for the Liberals. And they were so scared of Trump and Poilievre. So there's a lot of buyer's remorse. And there's a huge vacuum now, actually, on the progressive side, because Carney is governing, and he really is a progressive conservative from the right.
Okay, Hussain, I've got to interrupt because we're running out of time, and you need a new leader before the
I know, give us some time.
Hussain.
I agree. I was going to mention the difference in the leadership between the question, in the same poll, the question who would be a better prime minister. Carney leads by, I think 20 or 30 points over Pierre Poilievre. So that's very clear. I think the recent dip that you saw might be the pipeline issue that, 2 weeks ago, the MOA was signed. Seeing some people go from the Liberals to the NDP because they see the pipeline issue as a fundamental issue for them. So I wouldn't advise an election. When you're in power, you're in charge, you're the prime minister.
Hold on as long as you can? Okay.
Well, not necessarily as long as you can, but you're coming around Christmas. Nobody wants a winter election in the snow.
No, but
candidate.
I meant in 2026.
In 2020,
would
I
it
wouldn't
be
go
better off
early.
if you would not go early?
I wouldn't go,
okay.
As somebody who's campaigned and worked on many campaigns, those snowy election campaigns are no fun at all.
Okay, well, we'll see if there's an election in 2026 or 2027. Who knows? All right. Thank you very much to my panel. Great guests.
Thank
Much
you.
appreciated.
Thank
Great
you.
discussion.